If you're unfamiliar, chestnuts have a slightly sweet flavor, almost more like a sweet potato than other varieties of nuts. They are especially good when roasted, and some of that moisture and starchiness evaporates. So let's get started. With a small sharp knife, pierce them in an X formation on the flat side of the nut. The puncture will actually allow steam to escape as they cook, releasing pressure from the inside so they don't burst. And the X shape actually helps them curl open, making them easier for peeling later. Now, some people like to soak these before roasting to help them steam better, but we want these more on the drier side for our end purpose. Pop them in a 425-degree oven for 20 minutes and you'll notice they pop just like that. That's a good sign. After they've cooled, go ahead and peel them open, place them in a food processor, and pulse until they have ground into a nice mealy powder. I like to keep a few chestnuts whole and intact for Justin. Now for the agnolotti filling. Take 1 cup of strained fresh ricotta cheese. I'll link my how-to ricotta video below. Fresh Rico here really makes all the difference. Then 3/4 cup of softened mascarpone cheese. You can leave this out at room temperature for about 15 minutes or so to achieve that softened cheese. Then 1/2 cup of our chestnut flour and a good pinch of salt. Mix all together and taste it to ensure that it's exactly where you want it to be. In terms of cheese, I'd leave it alone, but you can adjust the chestnut amount to your acquired taste. Load it into a piping bag. If you don't have a piping bag, use a large Ziploc bag and push all of the filling down towards the bottom. We're going to pop this into the fridge for at least 30 minutes to help the cheeses firm up again. This will make piping way easier later. For the pasta dough, take 8½ ounces of egg yolks and 1 teaspoon of olive oil and mix together until homogeneous. We're then going to take 8 ounces of all-purpose flour. You can use double O flour as well, but we'll get into pasta flours in a more detailed pasta class later. Now you could do this in a mixer, but I'm going to demonstrate how to do this on your bench by hand. People get intimidated by hand mixing pasta, but you'll see it's actually more forgiving than you think. We're going to slowly start whisking or mixing the egg in a circular motion that will start wisping your flour into the wet ingredients. Keep doing this and slowly pick up more flour little by little each time. The mixture will start to get thicker as you're mixing until it's thick enough to fold all of the flour into your wet ingredients. But as you see here, I actually blew a hole out on the side of my flour wall. No stress though. Just manipulate the wet ingredients back into the flour and use a bench knife or bowl scraper to help press or mix the wet ingredients back into those dry ingredients. This will actually come together easier than you think. Happy little accidents. We're going to knead this by hand, using as much flour as necessary to maintain a nice, hydrated, but not too wet or sticky dough. This is certainly the more aggressive part of our mixing, but keep kneading until the dough really comes together. By using the palm of our hand, we're going to fold the dough onto itself and pinch it together with our palms, then rotate and fold over again, repeating this until our dough forms enough gluten where it has a nice slight spring to it when poked. We're then going to wrap it in plastic wrap and let it rest at room temperature for 1 hour. This is going to let the gluten relax. Now, stemming from the Piedmont region in Italy, this adorable little purse of love is actually made by piping a long tube of filling, then folding over the dough and pinching them into shape. They're almost always made from a rich egg-based pasta dough that can be thick or thin, but is always a pillow shape. Cut off a small piece of dough and flatten it into a rectangle shape about 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick. This will help maintain an ideal shape later when sheeting out our pasta. Keep the rest of your dough covered with a towel to prevent it from drying out. Then run the dough through your pasta machine on its widest setting. We're going to let the roller do the work and further knead our pasta for us. After the first roll, fold the dough in half, give it a 1/4 turn, and then run it through the machine again. We're going to repeat this process about 8 to 10 times. This process actually helps develop a smooth, supple texture for our pasta. After we have a smooth and sheen surface on our dough, drop the roller to its second widest setting and pass it through. Slowly keep dropping your roller on each width until we get a very thin and translucent sheet. You should be able to see your hand through the dough. This is usually around setting 3 on a roller or a sheeter. Pro tip: It's okay to use flour when rolling, but try to use as little as possible. This will begin to dry out the surface of our pasta and prevent the dough from adhering to itself later on. Lightly dust your work surface with flour so the bottom of the pasta doesn't stick. This will help with shaping later. Since it's not being rolled into the pasta, it won't dry out your surface, so don't worry. Next, pipe a bead of filling down the center of the pasta sheet. Then, using your finger, apply a small amount of water on the far side of the filling of the bead to adhere the dough to itself. Fold the dough over on top of itself, and then use your thumb to compress the dough around the filling of the pasta. Pinch the bead between your pointers and your thumbs of each hand to compress it into little pillows, about a half of an inch wide or so. I like to move the dough every now and then to ensure we're not sticking to our work surface. This will be crucial later when we're finishing our pasta shaping. Then roll the shaped agnolotti over on itself and using your pinkies, further press the dough into the bottom of the pasta. Now this isn't so much traditional, but I like the little pocket we make in the back to hold sauce. It also acts as an extra support for our pasta exterior. Using a fluted cutter, because, well, we're fancy out here, trim the top of the agnolotti as close to the pillows as possible. Then with a quick and decisive motion, use the cutter to portion out these little pillows. Inspect your agnolotti to make sure they are sealed at the edges and pinched together as needed. Lightly dust them with flour to keep them from sticking. As you can see, we have that nice little pocket that we are looking for that's going to be perfect for holding sauce. I'll be working on only one burner to show you how to do this, but if you have two, it's best to have your saucepan and your pasta water going at the same time. That way, when your sauce is ready, you can just drop your pasta, which will only take about 90 to 120 seconds to cook before they're floating, which we can then add to our sauce. If you don't have multiple burners and need to do this separately, I suggest cooking the pasta first and shocking them in a water bath when you're ready before moving on to your sauce. Don't make the sauce and then allow it to wait while you cook the pasta separately. Your sauce will end up breaking due to the temperature decrease, so again, shock your pasta in an ice bath to stop them from cooking, just like so. Okay, now for the sauce. Similar to an Alfredo or other basic cream sauces, this dish is going to be rich but really let the agnolotti shine for themselves in flavor. Add a half a stick of butter to a pan and melt over medium heat. I'm going to add 1 smashed clove of garlic and 1.5 cups of heavy cream and mix until just incorporated. Then some fresh thyme and a bay leaf. This is going to infuse our cream sauce to have a more aromatic taste. We're then going to let this creamy butter go until it hits a simmer, then drop it down to a medium-low until it begins to reduce by a third. Be sure to keep it moving so your fat solids don't break from the emulsion or burn on the bottom of your pan. Don't worry, this is easier than it sounds. When we have a velveting thick texture on our sauce and it slowly drags itself when you pull across the pan like so, you now know you're ready. This is also referred to as nappe, a term used to describe the consistency of sauces as they hold perfect shape as they coat the back of a spoon. It's now time to take out some of those aromatics, but I chose to leave the garlic in there as well. See that nice pull? That's exactly what we're looking for. Then we add our pasta. Now normally it will already be hot, so all it needs is a good 30 seconds or so to infuse to the sauce, but since we shocked our pasta, we're going to let it go for about 45 to 60 seconds to allow our pasta to reheat and infuse with that yummy sauce. If your sauce is getting too thick when you're waiting on your pasta, you can add a tablespoon or so at a time of starchy pasta water to help thin it out. When you do this, let it continue to cook and get back into that desired consistency. The water evaporates a bit and the pasta starch helps stabilize and keeps the emulsification together. Of course, season with salt and pepper to your acquired taste. Now, when plating, be sure to get this to your guest or even in your mouth rather quick. We don't want our sauce to break considering there's a high amount of fat in there. By the way, when I say break, I'm referring to what could happen if the water and fat separate from each other due to becoming out of temper. This will physically look gross as you have a more viscous consistency and little beads of fat staring up at you from the sauce. It's no good. I then grated some nice aged Parmesan, some freshly grated roasted chestnut, and of course some fresh chives to brighten it all up. This is the kind of meal you make when you get home late on a weeknight and just want to stuff yourself with something rich and warm. Make these ahead of time, keep them in your freezer, and a great homemade meal will never be that far away. Till next time, friends.